How's it going, everyone? It's Foxy here, and this is a new series of mine I like to call Stories and Gameplays. The concept is pretty straightforward, but I'll explain it anyway. Basically, I'll be talking about some stories of mine that may or may not have anything to do with video games, and in the background I'll be including gameplays from various different games. So for the first addition to this new series, I'll be talking about the time I took part in a Call of Duty 4 tournament, and just how bullshit the entire thing was. So to begin this tale, it all started midway through the release of World at War around March, because I remember the title of the tournament being called March Madness or something along those lines. Anyway, me and my group of friends at the time found out about this tournament because we actually knew the guy who was setting it up. The interesting thing is that the owner of this tournament had, or maybe still has, a YouTube channel with a lot of subscribers. He wanted to record the entire tournament, however, instead of posting the thing on YouTube, he was going to live stream it on a site called Justin TV, which is now known as Twitch. I'm not sure why it wasn't put on YouTube either. I actually find that really bizarre, to be honest. Also, the winning team of this tournament would receive a good amount of PSN money. If I recall, it was $180 split 3 ways, because the tournament was meant to be played with teams of 3. So when we were told about this, we being my group of friends at the time, we were all for it. We signed up right away without knowing any of the rules to the tournament. Why, you ask? The owner didn't really release any information regarding the rules, or much of anything for that matter. All we knew is that it took place around March, and we needed to form a team of 3 people. My group of friends who played a lot of Call of Duty consisted of 5, and we didn't have any problems with making our team because the 2 who didn't end up being on our team were just as happy to be referees for the matches. And the owner was fine with this because he needed multiple refs anyway. However, our friends could not ref any matches that we were in for the obvious reasons that it would just be too biased of reffing. Okay, so by the time, maybe, I don't know, a week before any of the matches started, we finally got the rules, most of which made perfect sense. Each tournament match would be set up in a best of 3 rounds. The maps and game modes were chosen randomly from a site, I believe. Everyone was fine with this, by the way. No one complained whatsoever about this part. That being said, now we get onto some of the weird rules. Me personally, I'm more of the no rules as long as you're not cheating guy. I've never seen the point of not being able to use certain things simply because you don't like them or you feel that they're overpowered even if they aren't whatsoever. That was not the case with this tournament. You could not use Juggernaut, Triple Frag, possibly Stopping Power, I'm not entirely sure. You cannot glitch anywhere, you cannot put on any attachments whatsoever, and you cannot put a camo on your gun no matter what. The first 4 things I listed are like, okay, whatever, but what's the problem with attachments? How is putting a red dot sight on your gun an issue? Even better was the camo thing, which everyone questioned about this. We were all like, what's the problem here? I remember the owner getting all pissy about it, saying how it was his rules, and if we don't like it, we could all fuck off. He also loves saying that, this is how the pros do it, and constantly bringing up MLG and just all this shit about trying to replicate them. Oh, and I should say that if you broke any of these rules, then the game would end and your team would lose a round. I don't remember teams being given any sort of warning either, in case there was an accident with someone messing up one of their classes, or whatever the case would have been. I'm jumping ahead a tiny bit here, but annoyingly the rules weren't even set in stone either. Like, I remember the owner changing shit around once the quarterfinals started. Everyone got confused about this shit too, because we were all like, what the fuck is happening? Why is this banned and why is that now banned and all this shit? It was stupid too. It was like, oh, now you can't use double tap or claymores, for example. Shit that was perfectly legal in the first time around could now get you kicked out of the game. By the time of my team's first match, we were not that worried or anything because we actually knew the other team we were facing. In fact, we actually played with and against them before just for shits and giggles. They were a decent team. I mean, if they went up against a group of randoms who weren't in a party or whatever, then they'll most likely destroy you. But against another solid team that is great with communication, they're easily beaten. When we did play against them, we won 2 matches in a row with not that much of an issue and knocked them out of the tournament. Right after we won, the owner scheduled another 2 teams to play, which both me and one of my friends, who I will call Eric, ended up watching off the live stream and noticed something a little odd. During the first match, we noticed that one of the players was obviously using a modded controller. I knew firsthand he was using one, because I've owned a modded controller at one point. Actually, multiple times now. So I know exactly how they work, versus just someone like me and Eric, who are able to fire a single shotgun super fast. You see, when you use a turbo function on a gun that has no fire cap, the shots are consistent to the point where there is no difference in time between 2 shots. Even the fastest trigger finger cannot fire like that. You're gonna see some sort of difference at one point or another. I don't know who said something in the chat box first, but once one guy brought up that this player was cheating by using a modded controller, then everyone in the chat was going crazy about it. The refs and the owner eventually saw the chat box and eventually stopped the match, causing the guy with the modded controller to lose the round for his team. There's a very specific reason why I'm bringing this up, however that'll be explained later on. By the time the quarterfinals started, we had a very nasty falling out with one of our 2 friends who was a ref in the tournament. When I say group of friends, I'm talking like 12 or so people. I'm not talking about the 5 of us that were playing Call of Duty all the time. Anyway, we knew a girl who was having a lot of problems and was actually borderline suicidal. This guy had went off on her, sending her nasty messages, telling her that she should have killed herself and her unborn baby years ago, and all these terrible things. It was to the point where I think 4 or 5 of us, including the girl, set up a PSN chat room and invited him in, not only to confront him about all this, but to say that, you know, the whole friendship thing is done. We want nothing to do with him anymore because of just how he was acting. He was just a flat-out dick. He was not happy about this at all. I remember him screaming at all of us and quitting the chat and then proceeding to harass us with death threats and other just nasty messages until we all finally blocked him. Can I just add that this same guy was enlisting in the Marines, or at least he claimed he was. I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't know how I feel about a guy like that going into the Army. Honestly, I find the whole thing a little terrifying for anyone that was assigned to whatever unit or squad he was in. Who knows, maybe the whole experience changed him for the good. I couldn't tell you, nor do I really want to know. Again, like with the modded controller, there's a very good reason why I'm bringing this up, which will actually be explained right now. So we did the quarterfinals and won that. I don't really remember anything about it, honestly. But then the semifinal starts, and here we go, getting into the lobby with the other team. Then we notice something. One of the refs just so happens to be the guy we had our falling out with. I remember Eric going, hey, owner guy, he can't ref this match because, you know, he used to be our friend. It would just be a conflict of interest. The owner kind of bats it off and says that, oh, well, there's no one else to ref, so we have to deal with it. I was like, oh, fuck, this is not good. This ref, which we'll call Dickhead at this point, was not saying anything. He refused to talk whatsoever. It was very clear that he was still furious at us for not being friends with him anymore and calling him out. We were all very nervous about this matchup. We had no idea if Dickhead was going to call it clean or claim that we were cheating or whatever the case would have been. Now with the enemy team, we did end up watching a few of their matches off of the live stream to see how they would play, and they were not great at all. In fact, I would say they were terrible. So it wasn't like we were worried about losing against them or anything like that. So we end up playing our first game, and I believe it was on the map Backlot. I don't remember the game mode, but I know that we didn't have any sort of issue beating them. In fact, I think we beat them in this match by a landslide, if I recall correctly. Nothing was said by Dickhead, nor the owner. The refs were completely silent and didn't say anything about the match, except at the end where they were like, oh, good game, or something like that. That brings us to the next wonderful game where everything goes wrong. The map was Wetwork and the game mode was Headquarters. Within the first, 3 minutes of the game, there were 2 guys on the enemy team running around with AK-47s with underbarrel launchers, and they had camo on them. Remember that using any attachments in camo was banned, however, the match doesn't end. We kept going on for another minute or two, getting all confused and bitching to each other. I mean, even though we were winning, how come the refs nor the owner are not stopping the match? Then another minute or so goes by, and finally they stop the match. They don't disqualify them either. They restart the match for whatever stupid reason they came up with. This time around, they don't cheat or use anything that was considered banned. During the last minute of the game, we were winning by, again, a very large amount. Eric and I took out G3 semi-automatic rifles and were using that to destroy the enemy team. Both of us have very fast trigger fingers, but we weren't spamming them. I mean, it was pretty obvious. That being said, when we captured the very last headquarter base, we had celebrated the last 15 points or so by looking up into the sky and spamming the trigger as fast as we could. Well, that was our mistake, apparently, because once the game ended, we go into the lobby, and the owner says that Dickhead caught us cheating using modded controllers, so we're disqualified from the tournament. And the other team wins by default. I remember screaming, "Are you fucking kidding me?" loudly. I think it blew out everyone's ears. The chat room was even going insane about it. They were 100% on our side. You have to think of it like this. How come the enemy team wasn't disqualified for the 2 people breaking 2 separate rules, but then we're thrown out of the entire tournament for allegedly using modded controllers, despite not using a semi-auto gun until the last minute of annihilating the other team? We were all under the impression that cheating forces you to give up a round, not get kicked out of the tournament entirely. Anyway, everyone in the chat and our team was furious about it. I remember saying something like, "I'm using a blue fucking DualShock. You know this, so why are you accusing me of using a modded controller?" Then Dickhead finally opens his mouth and says, "It's not you, it's your third teammate." We're like, what the fuck? He's using an M16. How can you claim he's using a modded controller? We know he was using an M16 because that's the only gun this guy will ever use. They didn't say anything. They just kicked us right out of the lobby. The other ref who we are friends with was in the Justin TV chat room, and he flat out said that the ruling was fucking bullshit. And the owner popped into the chat room and told people to shut up about the ruling or else they'll be banned from the chat room. People didn't stop. I mean, they were going insane. And Eric, who was using the semi-auto as well as I, were in the chat room telling him to review the footage and that Dickhead ref is making up some fake ruling. Again, this guy was recording the game. He could have easily reviewed it and saw that Dickhead was lying. Instead, what he does is ban over 20 to 30 people, including Eric and me, from the chat and blocking us from his friends list. A few days later, we assumed that what happened was that Dickhead had talked to the owner about this whole thing and making it seem like he was the good guy in the situation and planned to screw us from the start. Now, the owner wasn't really a friend of ours. He was, I guess, more of an acquaintance, someone that we would occasionally play with, but not all that often because he was actually very obnoxious. Like, he's one of those guys that can't take losing a game without it being bullshit or someone is cheating. I'm sure we all know, or at least have played with someone like this. Then once the tournament ends, we find out something fascinating from the other ref that we're friends with. The team that won the tournament just so happens to be in the same exact clan that the owner is a part of. In what way is that not fishy? If I was making a tournament, I would absolutely not let anyone in my clan or group that I'm involved with be in a team in my tournament. It's a massive conflict of interest in my opinion. If anything, I would be like, okay, you can all be a part of the tournament as refs, but that's it. it gives off such a sketchy vibe. If I actually knew that this team would have been involved with the tournament from the start, I doubt I would have even bothered, you know? Because right away I would have felt that this tournament is rigged in some fashion. So, yeah, that's the story of my bullshit March Madness Call of Duty 4 tournament that I was a part of. I look back on it almost 8 years later, being 24 years old now, and thinking to myself, why did I even bother taking part in this tournament in the first place? I could have done something more productive, or whatever else, really. It could have been my ego at the time, because back in my heyday of Call of Duty, which would have been from 2008 to 2012, I was insanely good. But, oh well, life goes on, as they say. I want to thank you all very much for watching and listening to my story, and take care, everyone.